All right, so buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving headfirst into a total action roller coaster.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking John Wick, the 2014 film that kind of redefined what a revenge thriller could be.
It definitely made a splash.
We've got a mountain of intel here, from the casting crew to how it blew up at the box office, and of course we've got a whole spectrum of opinions from viewers just like you.
Yeah, you can't talk about John Wick without talking about how people reacted to it.
Absolutely. Our mission, if you choose to accept it,
I think I will.
is to figure out what exactly made John Wick such a phenomenon.
All right, challenge accepted.
Perfect. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so right off the bat, one thing that really pops out when you look at this movie is how successful it was.
Yeah, for real.
I mean, we're talking a movie made for about 20 million,
Yeah.
and it just explodes worldwide, bringing in over 86 million.
That's huge.
Right, and it kind of makes you step back and go, okay, what was it about this story that connected with so many people?
Exactly. And, at its core, it's this really simple story, but it clearly resonated with a lot of people.
It did.
They've got John Wick, this retired hitman.
Played with this kind of quiet intensity by Keanu Reeves, right?
Exactly. And he's trying so hard to leave that life behind, especially after losing his wife.
You can really feel that he's trying to move on, find some peace.
Yeah, but then his world gets completely shattered when his vintage Mustang gets stolen.
A 69 Mustang.
And to make it even worse, a puppy. A final gift from his wife, Helen.
Oh, man, that puppy. That's like the ultimate gut punch,
Totally.
Not just a car, it's the symbol of his wife, this last connection he has to her.
Right, and that's when John Wick, the Baba Yaga, comes back to life.
Yeah, that's the turning point, the switch flips.
Oh, and speaking of dedication to the role, Keanu Reeves actually did almost all of his own stunts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like 90% of them, according to the reports.
Wow, that's some serious commitment.
Absolutely, you can really feel it in the action sequences.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that revenge plot. It's pretty straightforward, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, at its heart, it's a retired assassin going after the people who wronged him.
Right, he wants payback for his car and, of course, for his dog.
And that simplicity, that's actually a really interesting point, because that's where you start to see this big divide in how people felt about the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Some viewers, they really like that clear-cut revenge story,
Right, they just want to see the action unfold.
Exactly. They don't need a super complicated plot or a bunch of moral dilemmas.
We saw reviews calling it like pure stylish action or an awesome revenge movie.
Yeah.
One person even said it reminded them of those classic 80s and 90s action flicks,
Oh, yeah, those are straight to the point.
But then you have the other side of the coin, the people who really didn't like that straightforwardness.
Yeah, for them, that simplicity was a problem.
They felt like the plot was empty, like it lacked depth.
Right. We saw some pretty harsh reviews, people calling it horrific or just ridiculously unbelievable. One person even said it made Taken look like, Shakespeare.
Oh, wow.
Like, Taken had this complex, nuanced plot compared to John Wick.
Yeah, they also really didn't like all the headshots, like it was just too much.
Yeah, and they questioned how he always knew exactly who to target and all that chaos,
I guess it depends on what you're looking for in a movie.
Exactly. If you're looking for this super deep, introspective character study,
Right.
John Wick might not be your cup of tea.
But for others, the emotional weight of that puppy, the fact that it was this last gift from his wife,
Oh, yeah, that adds a whole other layer.
it's enough to justify this whole rampage of revenge.
It's like you've intruded on his grief, on his attempt to find peace.
Yeah, it's this visceral reaction, like something precious was taken away.
It's primal,
Okay, now let's talk about something that pretty much everyone seemed to love.
Hit me with it.
The action, the fight choreography.
Oh, yeah. John Wick knocked it out of the park with the action.
Everyone's raving about how well executed and how realistic it all felt.
And, a lot of people were really happy that it wasn't all CGI.
Right, they used a lot of practical effects.
Yeah, it makes it so much more visceral. You're really there in the moment.
Some reviews called it like a symphony of violence.
Wow.
And they even pointed out how he actually reloads his guns,
Yeah, it's those little details that make it feel so real.
And it's not just mindless action either. There's this real tactical element to the fights.
Yeah, you can tell that a lot of thought went into every move.
Which makes sense when you realize the director, Chad Stahelski, has a background in stunt work.
Oh, that explains it.
Yeah, he was even Keanu Reeves' stunt double. in The Matrix.
That's awesome.
But even with all the praise for the action,
There are always some dissenting voices.
there were a few people who thought it was too much, like it got repetitive.
Makes sense. Not everyone wants wall-to-wall action.
One person even said all the headshots got boring after a while.
I can see that.
And they also questioned how he could be so accurate and take down so many people.
It is pretty over the top when you think about it.
All right, let's move on to the world building, because John Wick creates this really unique world.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And the Continental Hotel, that's like the crown jewel of it all.
I think so, too. It's brilliant.
It's this safe haven for assassins. But it has its own set of rules, its own currency, even its own code of conduct.
It's like stepping into this whole other society.
And it's not just the hotel. There are all these hints about this larger criminal underworld, like the safe zones in New Jersey.
Where Mafia people can't kill each other, right?
Exactly. And then there's Charlie, the body disposal expert.
Yeah, it's what I do.
It makes you wonder, like, how deep does this rabbit hole go?
Exactly. It creates this whole world beyond what you see on screen.
And people loved it. You know, they call the world building superb and rich.
Right. One person even said it was like a comic book for adults.
That's a great way to put it.
It is.
Now, what about Keanu Reeves' performance as John Wick? What did people think?
Overall, it seems like people really loved his performance.
Yeah, a lot of the reviews praised his charisma, the intensity he brought to the role.
And that quiet depth he has.
Right, and some people even said it was one of his best roles ever.
A real career-defining performance, they said.
We saw comments about how believable he was, how his stoicism just fit the character perfectly.
One person even said his blank expression worked in his favor.
Yeah, let the action do the talking, right?
Exactly, but of course you can't please everyone.
Right.
There were some who just weren't convinced.
One review even called him a horrible actor.
Ouch, that's harsh.
It just goes to show you how subjective acting can be.
Definitely. Everyone brings their own baggage to a performance.
Let's move on to the supporting cast, because there are some big names in there.
Yeah, you've got Michael Nyqvist as Viggo Tarasov,
Alfie Allen as his son, Iosef.
Willem Dafoe as Marcus,
Ian McShane as Winston, the owner of the Continental.
and Adrienne Palicki as Mrs. Perkins.
So how did they fare in the eyes of the viewers?
Well, opinions were kind of all over the place, as you might expect.
Yeah, I mean, Alfie Allen as Iosef, some people thought he was perfectly hateable.
Which is kind of the point, right?
Exactly. But then others really didn't like his accent.
Yeah, accents can be tricky.
Willem Dafoe as Marcus, most people seem to like him.
Yeah, he's got this cool, understated presence.
Although one person said they couldn't really buy him as this hardcore assassin.
I guess he doesn't exactly scream cold-blooded killer.
Ian McShane as Winston, though, he was a real fan favorite.
Yeah, he just oozes this quiet authority, this mystery.
And Adrienne Palicki as Mr. Perkins, she got some attention too.
One person even said she was one of the most memorable female assassins they'd seen.
That's high praise.
It is.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about the themes and the tone of the film.
All right, sounds good.
So, revenge and grief, those are obviously the big ones.
They drive the whole story. You know, John's entire motivation comes from that loss and that need for payback.
Right, and then there's the overall tone. Reviewers use words like stylish and intense.
Definitely, it's got this really distinct visual style, this gritty, neon-soaked aesthetic.
And, you know, there's also this surprising thread of dark humor throughout the film.
That's true. It's not all doom and gloom.
A lot of people picked up on that.
Yeah, I think it helps balance out the violence.
There were also a bunch of comparisons to other films, like Taken, obviously,
Yeah, the revenge theme.
and The Matrix, because of Keanu Reeves and the action style.
Some people even compared it to classic 80s and 90s action movies.
Oh, yeah, the ones that just get straight to the point.
And one review even said it was like a Punisher story with some Yakuza and film noir thrown in.
Oh, that's interesting.
They even said it felt like a video game at times.
Which kind of makes sense with all the action.
It does.
All right, let's talk about the technical stuff for a minute. The cinematography was really praised.
Oh, yeah, the visuals in John Wick are amazing.
It's super stylish, really striking, and that use of color, especially the neon lights.
It's like its own character in the film.
And the soundtrack also got a lot of love.
It definitely pumps up the intensity during those action scenes.
And we've already mentioned Chad Stahelski, the
Yeah.
director, but people really appreciated his clear, well-choreographed action.
Yeah, you can actually see what's happening, which is not always the case with action movies.
One person specifically mentioned how much they loved the lack of shaky cam.
I hate shaky cam.
Okay, so here's something that's really fascinating about the reviews. They're all over the place.
Right.
I mean, we're talking everything from perfect 10 out of 10 scores
Calling it a masterpiece.
to absolute bottom of the barrel 1 out of 10s,
Wow, that's a huge range.
calling it awful and a complete waste of time.
So people either loved it or hated it.
It seems like it.
That's really interesting.
And the negative reviews, they focused on the same things that others loved.
So the plot, the violence.
Yeah, they thought the plot was weak, the characters weren't developed enough, and the violence was just gratuitous.
Some people just don't have the stomach for that much action.
And some people even accused the positive reviews of being fake.
Like they were planted by the studio or something.
It just shows you how strong the reactions were, both positive and negative.
You don't see that very often.
Now, despite all that, the film was a massive box office success.
Yeah, it made a ton of money.
And that probably has a lot to do with why it spawned this whole franchise of sequels.
Right. John Wick is a whole universe now.
Exactly. Which is pretty amazing for a movie that started with such a simple premise.
And it's still going strong.
So what do you think, what does the success of John Wick tell us about action movies today?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because it shows that audiences are really drawn to this kind of hyper-stylized, action-packed experience.
Yeah, and maybe the plot doesn't have to be super complex.
As long as the action is good and the characters are engaging.
But then there's the other side, the people who really need that deeper story.
Who want characters they can connect with on a deeper level.
It's a real balancing act.
It is.
So to wrap things up, John Wick is definitely a film that gets people talking.
Oh, yeah. It sparks debate.
It's got this super stylized action, this simple but effective revenge plot, and Keanu Reeves is great in it.
And that world, the Continental, the assassins, it's so intriguing.
But it's also super violent, and some people found the plot and the characters to be lacking.
Which is totally fair.
It's really a matter of taste.
It is, and that's what makes it so interesting to talk about.
So the question for you, dear listener, is what does the success of John Wick say about what we want from action movies today?
Do we just want to be entertained by the action?
Or do we need something more?
Something to think about.
It's definitely something to ponder.
It is.
Maybe it all comes back to that basic human need for revenge, that feeling of wanting justice when something precious is taken from you.
That's a good point.
It's something we can all relate to on some level.
Yeah, whether we like it or not.
And on that note, we'll leave you to think about it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of John Wick.
See you next time.